Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and with me I've got Mac
What's good?
and Gio.
What's good, guys?
We are back today, boys, reviewing the action from this weekend's Premier League games. But before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on the social media, both on X and Instagram. Our handle is at @houseup_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. We got to dive straight into it, Mac. The North London derby took place day of recording, actually. Finished 2-2 Arsenal Spurs. What was your take on this game?
Overall, I thought it was an enthralling match. Very two even teams. It's very unusual for a team to be able to come at the Emirates and dominate possession and in large aspects of the game, be able to control and dictate play. So it's very good from Tottenham. It's probably the best Spurs lineup that we've seen come against this Arsenal team under Arteta. So it's been a great challenge from Andres Spurs boys in this matchup. Overall, this match really had everything that you want. Great goals, great moments, mistakes, referee decisions, everything that you would ever ask for in a game of football in terms of highs and lows. It had. I feel like at the end of the day, we reached a fair conclusion. I think the point shared overall is fair based on the display from both teams and how kind of chances took place and everything of that ilk. This is, in my opinion, though, a much better point for Spurs because they historically have not done very well in this matchup. They, generally speaking, when they go to the Emirates, they get a slapping. No matter how well they're playing at the moment, generally speaking, it doesn't work out well for them. So to come in and just first time at the Emirates, be able to pull out a point and arguably, in some cases, maybe even should have won the game, I think that's great from them. Overall, North London as a whole still remains undefeated through the Premier League season so far. So it's still decent from both teams, but I think in some ways, like I said, even though I think that Tottenham might have edged it a little bit, Arsenal still have their moments, and they also would feel like, okay, maybe if we didn't make a mistake, I don't want to talk about that, but they could have come out with all 3 points for themselves, you know? So the game's the game. Sometimes it's how the cookie crumbles, but overall, like I said, phenomenal game of football.
Yeah, and of course, it finished 2-2, but this time around, no Kane for Spurs. But Gio, there is another combination that looks like it's sort of coming into fruition, and that's of course James Maddison and Heung-min Son. Maddison assisting both of Son's goals for Spurs, but also on the opposite end, Arsenal, both goals, a big part to play on that. Christian Romero, the deflection, and of course the penalty that he conceded. Do you think it was a fair result of the 2-2 tie? What was your take on the game?
Yeah, I think both teams missed out on great opportunities equally. So I think a tie is the fairest way to kind of settle this game for the time being until you know, obviously they play, you know, again at Spurs Stadium on Spurs ground. But no, I thought James Maddison was crucial to this game and crucial to the success so far of Spurs. I think, again, Son playing up in the middle has really benefited him as well. He's able to make those darting runs into the box, and he's able to, you know, he's very good at angling shots, creating tips, flicks, and tricks. And was able to do that. You know, even the first chance they had, although he wasn't, you know, the one in the middle, making that overlapping run and great heads-up play by Kulusevski, that created a chance for Johnson, and that could have easily been 1-0. So I thought Spurs came out the game, you know, and shocked a lot of people. You know, we were expecting Spurs to maybe sit back a little more, lose a lot more possession, but at the end of the day, they had more possession than Arsenal, and you know, we can talk about more how Arsenal crumbled a little. You know, they bent, but they didn't fully break. I think we can touch on, you know, Mac's favorite player, but we'll get Ray's idea on how this game went.
Yeah. No, I think so. It's, yeah, you guys pointed out completely correctly. Spurs didn't expect them really to do much in terms of possession, but they did have their, they enjoyed some possession when it benefited them for sure. And also just the goals that they were able to score, going away to Arsenal, their biggest rivals, and going down both times and coming back. I think is a great response from this team and something that I wouldn't have expected in previous seasons. So maybe it's just the new manager bounce, and I guess the players are trying to make the manager proud and see if they can establish themselves on that team. But it's a positive sign for Spurs as well. For Mac, though, I just want to, of course, bring it back to, firstly, there's a couple of changes. I think it was Nketiah that started instead of Martinelli and Trossard, who both did not feature. And then in keeper, Raya continued to start in net. Like Gio mentioned, had decent saves early on, especially in the match. But everything really changed as well after the halftime break with the Jorginho substitution. Walk us through some of those changes, and did that change the dynamic of how Arsenal played, Mac, or do you think it was just the goals that were conceded were just Spurs playing well and creating the chances?
The change is definitely it's unfortunate because they are at the cost of injury all across the board. The reason why you have Gabriel Jesus, in my opinion, starting on the left hand side was due to the fact that both Trossard and Martinelli didn't even feature in the squad, given the fact that they've both been injured. So that just seems like a natural fit where maybe you don't want to start Reece Nelson or you don't want to be able to start Emile Smith-Rowe. So having the flexibility, which Jesus does provide and can play well on the left-hand side, or even either wing position, as done for previously for Manchester City, even at times for Brazil. So he has the flexibility to be able to move around the pitch. You both know my opinion in terms of there is a drop-off when you're playing Nketiah centrally, where I think he's really good in transition. In certain moments, but at times kind of doesn't apply the exact same type of pressure or doesn't have the same type of presence that Jesus does when he's playing up top. So there is a different feature there. So it was due to injury. And even at the halftime substitutions where Fabio Vieira for Kai Havertz, that is a natural sub. That's something that we would have expected happen given the first half of the game. But Declan Rice coming off and the drop off to Jorginho, because Partey's already injured and it looks like Declan Rice, Arteta came out after the game and talked about that he picked up a back injury. And that's the reason why that he made the rotation. For me, like I think I mentioned to you, right? If Declan Rice was missing a limb, I still probably want to have him on the field instead of Jorginho, to be honest. So overall, not a great look. But the reason behind it's just given the position and why we always kind of harp on and we come back to squad depth. You want to be able to have these rotational players because it's a long Premier League season. Injuries are going to happen, and they're going to happen at times. You don't want them to happen in a big fixture like this. It's something that's unexpected, but you have to be prepared for it. So it was good in Arsenal that they do have areas of depth and flexibility across other positions, but don't have that exact same feature, in my opinion, in central positions, especially in midfield. So it's a little bit tough there. I think overall, I guess one positive I do want to be able to take out the game because for me, I think over the last two games, and I know I've harped on this before, and I know both of you are probably going to roll your eyes at this. Kai Havertz played well. I was very surprised him coming in for Fabio Vieira at halftime in his previous game in the Champions League as well. I think that he's starting to pick up. It looks like he's a little bit more stuck in. It's great to see. So I just want to be able to give him his flowers a little bit, where it's obviously been a tough transition initially because he's playing a position he's never played for, but he's adapting. Big game coming out against Spurs. All he was really missing is creating an opportunity or the half volley strike just outside the box. If that went in, then that would completely have settled him into the team. So I think give him a couple more weeks and he will be there. But I think that just like, even though Arsenal are picking up injuries, there are these other players that could potentially feature more. Like a player earlier mentioned before, I wouldn't be surprised if injuries do persist. We start to see more of Emile Smith-Rowe. He was a key player for Arsenal a couple years ago, but due to injuries all of last year, really couldn't really feature in the same level. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see him going forward. I guess start to, like I said, feature maybe even on the left-hand side as a replacement. Because again, for me, if Nketiah and Jorginho are on the bench to start, it's okay. I don't want them to start overall though. So don't want to see
that. I mean, of course, you, and that's why you kind of hope that Arteta can, with his personnel, just make things work. Unlucky that there were injuries, but I think overall the game plan sort of stays the same, and you just hope that the substitutions coming on are able to keep that level of intensity up. Joe, you wanted to jump in here?
I don't know. Maybe it's just me, or maybe they just don't get enough touches on the ball during the game. But correct me if I'm wrong. It just doesn't look like Ben White and a William Saliba look as confident as as they were last season. It seems like the decisions have been like playing the ball has looked a little yeah, just not as confident. I don't know how to explain them, but when I see them on the ball and when I see them play the ball, it just doesn't look like they're as confident as they were last season. Arguably, they are a better team now, but they just don't look as confident going forward with the ball. So, I don't know, Mac. Is that something I'm just seeing, or is that something
No,
you're noticing as well?
I would say you're absolutely correct. I think in possession, there were quite a few times, not just in this game, but thus far at the beginning of the season, where especially those two players, I think that's completely fair. When they're transitioning the ball out the back, I would say their pass accuracy hasn't been to the levels that they were last year. So I think that's completely fair. Quite a few times where like Saliba would try to find the split pass to be able to feed it through to Odegaard after he's like faking to go to the right hand side, but try to play it centrally, but that wouldn't stick. Similar with Ben White, where I feel like in sometimes you can argue, and I guess it's a debate: is he playing out of position? But I feel like sometimes you can't get at him with pace. If you have a pacey winger, he can get cooked on the and it'll be a little bit easier this year than last year. Well, interesting to see if as the games pick up, if that can change, because those are two key players for Arsenal for sure. I think though, if we were to stick to this game, and I think you targeted the right side, which is the right side for Arsenal, you saw how Tottenham at the end of the first half, and I would argue for a lot of the second half, they started to get in possession because when Arsenal got the ball, they weren't able to, because their trio of Odegaard, Saka, Ben White overlaps has been kind of their main fulcrum in attack, where if we can kind of rotate the possession there, create little pockets of space, play quick 1-2s and see if we can get in and around or out wide from those players, that's when they're at their best. And in those sections of the game, the end of the first half, that's when Tottenham scored. And up after, I would say right after the penalty, up until the end of the game, that area of the pitch wasn't seen as much, and that's in part. And I think you're correct to point this out: is when Arsenal did have to get the ball, the players in those positions that tried to be able to kind of get the ball up the pitch to those key players weren't able to do it successfully. So I think that's a great call out, and definitely kind of something that needs to be fixed for Arsenal going forward, because that's their best area to be able to create opportunities. And it's sometimes to the detriment of whoever's playing on the left-hand side, where they're just kind of, an extra body to come and attack and look there for that final touch. So they get a little, it's similar to, let's say, the difference between the ball handler in basketball and kind of the corner 3-point shooter. Sometimes you're just there in the corner there to spot up and wait for your opportunity, but otherwise, come on, we're running that pick and roll right there on the right-hand side. So they weren't able to do that for large sections of this game, which, like, I think you correctly pointed out, Gio, on the right-hand side. It was to their detriment, and Tottenham exposed that. So it was great. Overall, disappointing from Arsenal, but great to see from Spurs.
As a neutral, though, I feel like, of course, the tie was, I think, a fair result, but it gives me sort of that excitement for the return leg for this fixture. And it is early on, so I'm sure Arteta's going to figure out those things out. And Andrew's also going to learn more about his side, so I'm excited to see when they do face each other again later in the season. But let's move on to another game that took place today, actually. Liverpool 3, West Ham 1. Yeah, Mac, you called it. Like Joe said, Liverpool did get the win at home, which, getting on the ball and getting chances, outpossessed and outchanced West Ham. Sort of something that I guess Liverpool at home would have expected. But it wasn't that easy early on, Gio. It could have gone actually completely other way. West Ham, of course, getting crosses in and getting, of course, not just crosses in, but actually getting first to the ball and getting chances from that will always be a struggle for Liverpool to contain, especially early on in the game. What were your takes on this game, Gio?
I just thought West Ham started off on a great foot. Typically we would notice them, sit back a little and try to hit teams on the counter, but they were on the front foot. They were pressuring defenders out into the corner and kind of almost doubling them, pressuring them, winning the ball back, getting balls into the box, like that early chance, and then great save by Allison. I just thought they had, the right mentality going into the game. Although, and and that's to say, even after the penalty shout, or the penalty was awarded to Liverpool, even after the game, after that fact, they were still really going after their chances, and I think because they focused a lot on going for their chances, they lacked a little on the defensive end. Like they were almost ready to go before they even got the ball. So I think that's where the pockets of space opened up for Liverpool in order for them, to score goal number 2 and goal number 3. So all in all, I think it was a fair challenge from West Ham, but I think the return leg on this one could be a little different as well. As they know the mistakes that they made. They still have strong enough players that can compete, and we saw points and times of the game where we thought West Ham could really turn it around. But overall, I think management style and on paper these Liverpool players are that just much better than the West Ham players.
Okay, that's fair. That's completely fair, I guess, take for that. My take on that is as well. Even just the conceding of the penalty for West Ham, it is unfortunate. But what sort of the chaotic style of play that Liverpool do play with, that's what will happen. Diaz really driving at the defender and then trying to slip it into Nunez, who makes a good run, but even though his touch is horrible, the pass is behind him. Salah, because he is a willing runner, and that goes across for the front three that Liverpool play, they will get into those positions, and something just has to bounce, and it just happened that it went to Salah. Agar took him down, and that was a penalty given. On a separate day, it's just cleared or doesn't happen, but I think just the relentless energy that the front three for Liverpool had in this game as well, sort of just to give props to Nunez for his goal and Jota at the end for the tap-in. Just their positioning and their gambling always will create chaotic circumstances, and I think that's what Liverpool thrive on, which for them it worked really well in this game. But Mac Gio pointed out one of the flaws that Liverpool have continuously, and that's the defensive shape and also defending from set pieces. Van Dijk, a couple of years ago would be considered one of, if not the best defender in the world, at least for a season. Are there questions about his sort of leadership and ability on the pitch from what you've seen so far this season? What do you think?
No. To put it bluntly, I apologize. But in essence, I'm less so worried about him. I think that the question, and it'll be interesting to see, is that they still haven't figured out that third piece in midfield, where in some places Fabinho is a third center back in a lot of ways in terms of stature, aerial presence, positioning. They haven't necessarily, like I said, figured that out. I do want to give the flowers to Curtis Jones. I thought he had a good game. Very interesting player for Liverpool. It'd be interesting to see how he's utilized, because sometimes they've used him as a 6 before. He generally, I feel like, plays as an 8 in a lot of other games as well. So it'd be interesting to see what his future is, given that he's only 22. So he's still a young player, been around, and there's a lot of talk. I think Steven Gerrard said that's his next favorite guy coming up, essentially for Liverpool, from the big crop of young players. So I think that he could be an interesting piece and maybe a piece of the puzzle, because he does have the stature and size. So if he's able to adapt and kind of play that position and making it his own, I think that could be an interesting resolution to some of those defensive issues that we might be talking about. I do, though, think that Van Dijk coming back in this fixture, given the fact from his red card before, was huge, because he is that aerial presence where let's say he missed this game, we might have felt that West Ham might have had a kind of maybe even more opportunities from set pieces or from crosses, which that's really kind of their bread and butter. I did see the stat, and I saw it before the game, and I didn't want to kind of give it out a little bit earlier because I don't want to ruin your betting on, so I apologize. But in 72 Premier League games visits as a manager to face Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, and Manchester United combined, David Moyes has won none, tied 21, and lost 51. And losing 13 trips in a row after this game. So these types of kind of the historical big four. This is not what he wants to be able to do. This is not his bread and butter in terms of how he's going to be successful, because in those breakdowns from crosses, from set pieces, the bigger teams generally handle that a little bit better, having that little extra size, that organization, kind of that thought process. So this is definitely not the fixture for West Ham. It's still, for me, I don't think it's Liverpool's first kind of true test yet. I don't feel like they've been tested there since that Newcastle game. So we've seen some goods from them. It'll be interesting to see, and we'll talk about later on this week how they'll face against Tottenham, because that is, I guess, their best test so far this season when that matchup does line up. But we're seeing positive signs from Liverpool. They're having one of their best starts of the Premier League season in history. All of them. If you look at the best rankings of the first 6 games, it's clock. And he's doing the business right now. He's giving them the goods. Interesting to see how continue going forward. But right now, I think if you're in Liverpool land, you got to be happy with how things have been going, and especially after this game.
Yeah. Personally, of course, that's a great position to be in. I guess. Lastly, for you, Gio, though, are you sort of? Is it too early to say Liverpool should be one of course, challenging for top 4, but should they be one of those, I guess, dark horse title challengers this season, or is it too early to talk about such a grand title at the end of the season?
To be a contender, I still think they are missing, 1 or 2 signings. You can never count Liverpool out. If we're going to be completely fair and honest, you can never count Liverpool out. I think there's far too much pedigree in that locker room. There's way too much pedigree from the manager to just kind of fold and expect, okay, we can almost get a free pass because people can see that we don't have quite, the namesake as the other 11 guys standing on the other side of the pitch, but that doesn't mean that, we're going to bend over. So I think.
Welcome back to Hustle Footy, guys. We're going to continue today's podcast discussing now Chelsea 0, Aston Villa 1. Gio, as you noted here, struggles continue for Chelsea. They just can't buy a goal. And, of course, they do end up conceding and losing this game. What were your takes on this game, Gio?
Yeah, I mean, Chelsea had their chances. Don't get me wrong. Looking back at this game, Raheem Sterling had a few chances. Just the front line, they have the pace, they have the skill to put defenders on their heels. So, I'm personally, I don't consider myself a football, specialist. I do love the game, but I just don't know what's going on there. They could definitely put goals in the back of the net, but nothing is falling right now. Which would kind of almost make me think like they just need one for the floodgates to start opening. And to be fair, Mudryk didn't have a horrible game. He didn't have a great game, but he didn't have a horrible one either. That through ball that he did play was quite nice. Definitely looking up. Definitely kind of leading the runner into that pass, which are bright spots. I know at the end of the day, a lot of fans are going to hate on him. And at the end of the day, Johnny Evans has more assists than him. So I just want everybody to take that in. But I thought, after the Gusto challenge, it was tough. It was tough. I mean, for it to be changed into a red card, obviously the referee saw something from VAR that, definitely had his mind changed. I really didn't get a great look at it, but maybe you guys did. Had a second look at it, but I didn't really have a great look at it. But the decision was made, and at that point, Chelsea kind of came into this game thinking, we kind of have to win. Kept it pushing as per they were playing with 11 guys. Was obviously exhausted. You can tell by the way they were running. By minute, I think 80, they were just almost kind of winded. That's where Villa pounced. Ollie Watkins from an absurd angle. But, great goal. Great concentration on, the second shot. So, credits to Villa. It's very easy for a team to just assume that because another team has 10 guys now that they're gonna go over there and steamroll them. It very easily could have went the other way and gone south for Villa, but Unai Emery kept the boys in check, and they got the job done and got all 3 points.
Yeah, and I think so going down a man, of course, is tough, but the mistake leading up to the goal, Thiago Silva is the player that gives away the ball for that breakaway to happen. It's not like the easiest goal score either. I think Cole has a block on the first Ollie Watkins shot, and then the second shot he's able to squeeze in, which was taken quite well. But it's just that type of season for Chelsea. It's just a compilation of mistakes leading up to just chaos at the end. And if your most experienced and captain player is giving away these sort of chances, that's sort of where you're at the moment. Chelsea, though, they, like you said, Joe, they did have chances, but they just can't seem to make it go into the back of the net. Jackson, with getting onto the end of that Mudryk ball, you would expect him to finish that 1v1, but Emi Martinez, of course, saves that, and so I guess I don't know. I can't even say on another day Chelsea should win this game.
You can't,
because I mean, it wasn't like they were convincingly always on the positive threat, because Aston Villa had their chances as well. Sanchez, who is now the starting keeper for Chelsea, was quite busy, had a lot to do as well. So yeah, I guess Mac, kind of how you pointed out, Aston Villa were the winners for this game. What are your thoughts?
So my favorite stat of the weekend, any game, of anything that's happened from reactionary moments, and in terms of just looking back on this weekend, my favorite one, and I was going to take you back in time, really to far long history, pre-World War II. Aston Villa have won consecutive away league visits to Chelsea for the first time since a run of 3 between 1930 and 1933. This shows levels where Unai Emery has taken this Aston Villa team to a new level. We've not seen this in years, since probably like the Ashley Young, Gareth Barry when he was young, not like, as we've seen him before. Like since that team, we have not seen levels like this from Aston Villa. On the flip side, we've not seen this poor of levels from Chelsea pre-Abramovich. So it's you're completely seeing a flip of the script of how those two teams have performed historically. I think if we're just kind of going directly into this game, my thoughts, I think you both highlighted well. I don't blame Pochettino. His job as a manager is, and I think he's done it successfully, where he's able to get his players, attacking players, into the final third. It's up to them in those moments that you can't coach a player. Okay, you got to make this run into the box. You got to time this pass correctly to be able to make sure that someone can latch onto in that moment. Here's how you start the ball. That's not his job. He successfully is able to get this team in possession to be able to build up play, but they're lacking confidence in that final third. I think that we can all agree that they have good names, that if you play them on different teams, a Sterling, a Jackson, a Mudryk, players like that, if you put them on a different team and a different lineup, a different system, they could bang in goals. They can create opportunities for their teammates, but it's the confidence and the unity and just having an understanding in those moments. Okay, what do we actually need to do as a unit together to be able to kind of finish off those chances? And they haven't been able to do that. I think that's a constant trend. It's going to continue happening. I'll be very skeptical to see if anything does change for this Chelsea. I think that, Gio, that's a great call out. Maybe 1, and then kind of the floodgates and the confidence starts to soar. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a slow burn for that until a player like Ikuku comes back, who in preseason looked phenomenal for them and seemed like a great signing. So I think that it's going to get worse before it gets better for Chelsea. And just, again, I always come back to, it feels like, I know it's rough to say, it feels like they pissed away £1 billion, which is really tough to do, even in today's economy. Like it's really, really tough to do, Yep.
Yep.
I think, but to speak on the positive side for Aston Villa, again, like I said, these are levels that we haven't seen from them in a long time. It's great to see. I know later this week, we're going to preview some other fixtures, but the Aston Villa versus Brighton fixture, I think, is kind of, in terms of an underdog, like a away favorite or like your second favorite team. I think this is going to be which of those teams is at that next level. And based off the showing, Aston Villa look very good. They were the much better team, and the red card for them against Chelsea, Gusto, correct call. Great to see VAR implemented like that. It leaves even Chelsea in a further tough spot because now they're out another right back, but it'll further kind of solidify their dominance. But lastly, before I kind of switch it up, you guys talk, I know I'm going along here. Ollie Watkins, probably the second best transitional striker in the Premier League. We're in transition. We're on a break, one-on-one. I think, because we're not talking about the Rashford, other than Haaland in those moments, that through ball between the center backs, I think he's the second best at it. He's so good in those moments where that's where he thrives. In if they have a whole lot of possession, then their cross comes in, he's useless. That's not his game. But in transition, he is clinical. It's smooth. He makes it look easy. And a shot like that from that angle, that's pure striker's finish. So great to see he's still playing well.
Great shout, great shout. And can you believe that's his first Premier League goal this season? When the commentators rang it out, I just couldn't believe it because that quality striker. You'd expect him to be on more sort of the score sheet more regularly. But Gio, Aston Villa up to 6th now. Could this result, along with I believe their 3-1 win against Crystal Palace, be sort of that catapult into their top 4, top 5 push for this season? Is it too early? Are you convinced from this Aston Villa team? What are your thoughts?
I'm not quite sold on it yet. Yes, again, I picked them to be my underdog team, dark horse team, but I think again, there were those matches where they kind of completely came out extremely flat and got completely outplayed. I think I need to see closer results when they start, drawing those types of matchups, those bigger matchups against, say the traditional top 6 or whatever the case may be. Then I'll start, kind of buying in even more. I just need to see more. I just need to see Aston Villa be able to sort of control a game from start to finish. Just be able to possess the ball and to kind of play the game their way. As they want and however they choose to execute. Until I see a game like that, I don't think I'm completely convinced. They are still my favorite dark horse team, but not quite yet.
I hear you. Of course, the results I think you're referring to are the 5-1 loss to Newcastle and the 3-0 loss to Liverpool, but they have had high-scoring games against Everton, Aston Villa, and Crystal Palace and Burnley. So I guess it's just a matter of consistency, and we kind of expect there to be a little bit of time for that settling, especially because it's still quite early on in the season. But something to keep an eye out for. If Aston Villa get that consistency, like how they did at the end of last season, it's going to be a team to be reckoned with. But I guess let's move on now, Mac, to some other Premier League matches from this season from this weekend. Let's have you pick one and just give us something that stood out to you from this weekend that we haven't covered already.
Perfect. So what I want to be able to jump in here is the Man City versus Forest game. Man City won 2-0. Biggest part of this game, Haaland scored, great. Still missing sitters. I love the. Oh, again, I just want to. I poke bears, Dylan Brooks. I poke bears. I'm ready. But I think the bigger part for me in terms of these upcoming fixtures is actually the Rodri red card. He's going to be missing 3 Premier League games, the next 3 ones, because it was issued as a straight red. So that means he's missing the Wolves game as well as the Arsenal game at the Emirates. So I think him not playing there is going to be a big miss. Because the drop-off, again, as we talk of in terms of players not playing well in central positions, are we going to see Calvin Phillips start? Who knows? I'm shocked. I think he's shocked too. But I think that's the bigger thing from this fixtures where we assumed Man City were going to win. It wasn't as convinced as they would want it to be. Haaland did score great. Foden looks phenomenal. Love to see him and Jeremy Doku. They're playing well. But I think the biggest takeaway in terms of what's going to impact the season as of right now is, like I said, the Rodri red card because he's missing some big games for them. So tough to see there. Actually, I'm not gonna lie. Lovely to see there. Great to see it. Very happy that it's happening. But I think that's, like I said, the biggest takeaway from this game. And like I said, it's probably going to impact the Premier League season more than what we're thinking even right now.
Yeah, of course, Rodri will be a big miss. What makes them tick, what makes Man City tick, especially sort of to keep tempo going, is going to be a huge miss. And I'm sure you guys saw sort of the altercation between him and I think it was Gibbs White that led to that straight red card. There's no excuse for that. And of course, I think Pep was also interviewed after the game asking if Rodri had apologized for the team, because obviously in that position you can't do that at all. But I love the shout. Foden, Doku playing quite well. Alvarez had been on a hot streak, and I saw on X, of course, that a lot of players transferred in Alvarez for this week, and of course, that being said, he's always going to blank. But good to see Haaland getting that goal as well. But my last question for you guys is: who is more surprised when it comes to being substituted in for a match? For Man City, would it be Scott Carson, their backup goalie, or do you think it would be Calvin Phillips when he has to come onto the pitch? Do you think both of them are equally as surprised? They're just having a snack on the bench, enjoying the game, and then Pep's like, "Hey, we need you to come on," and then they're like, "What? What's going on? I didn't sign up for this."
Gio, hot take. I think Scott Carson might start as defensive midfielder in the next game for instead of Calvin Phillips. I think that's what probably makes more sense. I wouldn't be surprised. No.
You know what's the craziest part?
Starts as defensive mid, Carson and net. Let's go. Let's call it now.
You know what's even crazier? I wouldn't be surprised if Carson started in defensive midfielder and Calvin Phillips came on for him in the 90th minute. Just to waste some time a little. But honestly, if Calvin Phillips doesn't start at this point,
what do you do?
Then, yeah, like what was the point of that move? One, there was interest from United, but I didn't want to be disloyal to Leeds. Look, you came here and you're literally sitting on the bench. Great potential. Had a great season at Leeds. Could have kept that going. I'd rather have seen him go to a team like Spurs, even, where he would get used and would get minutes under his belt, so he can continue developing. Get minutes for England, possibly continue developing. But right now, he's just really a spot filler. And if he doesn't start at the point where Rodri is completely out for 3 games, and you don't get at least 2 starts, I think as an athlete myself, I would feel completely disrespected.
For sure.
So it's going to be a clear tell, these next 3 weeks for him, whether life at City will be life at City and for how long. So yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Okay, yeah, completely fair. The next game that I'm going to talk about now, and Gio, you're going to have an ear up for this one. Of course, it's the Burnley 0, Man U 1 result from this past weekend. And not just because of a Man U win, but I felt Burnley, for lots of periods in this game, looked quite... I want to say good going forward. The passing up front looked sleek, and so it's just a shame that they find themselves, of course, without a win as of yet. But they're going to be a fun team to watch, kind of like what you would associate Brighton with. I think they would be, if they have things going for them, their goals start, getting into the back of the net, they might be a fun team to watch. But yeah, Burnley just unlucky that they weren't able to put any away. But on the opposite end, Bruno Van Persie, boys, that finish, fantastic. So Gio, what were your thoughts on that game?
At the end of the day, I just think it wasn't as convincing as I wanted it to be in my head. Okay, this week against Burnley, it's a time to show where we can also play possessive football. They didn't really play all that possessive football either. They still kind of went on that counterattack route. I thought, Brightside was actually Hannibal. I thought he was kind of pushing, he was pushing the agenda, kind of pushing the tempo whenever he could. So I did like to see the looks of him on the pitch. But yeah, surprisingly, another bright spot was actually, to me, was Johnny Evans. For him to get the offside goal called back, for him to look up the pitch and hit that ball long range to Bruno. I think that's an audacious attempt even for him. But he did it. He took the chance, and I think that's what United kind of has failed to do. The last 5 weeks is not taking their chances whenever they could. So yeah, I mean, there were a few bright spots for sure, but I just didn't think it was as convincing of a performance as I would have liked to see. And I think many fans would agree. I think the scoreline just is not. It's not it. It's not quite it.
Fair, Mac.
So
your thoughts?
I'm gonna start, and I'm just to get this out of the way. Great to see Manchester United win. I think that's the only positive really out of this game for them. They've won. They got the monkey off their back. Can we build some momentum? Can it's a game they should have won by a lot more. They're a much better team in terms of like just the investment in the squad. The difference between the two is incomprehensible. So good to see them win, and I think that's important. I think that's the biggest thing, and at least settle people down for a little bit, and people could take a deep breath and check their heart rate before they go into the next fixture. Aside from that, not great in terms of like possession. Burnley had 62% possession, completely dominated the ball, bossed the game, had more shots. Were unfortunate, in my opinion, not to take the lead. A couple opportunities, they just missing that kind of that cutting edge class, that maybe that the more of a split second decision or taking a chance a little bit earlier or at the right moment. There's the difference between the championship versus the Premier League, right? They're just missing that little bit more. Will that come from the players as they adjust to the pace of the league? We'll wait to see. It's still early in the season, but of course, the further and further you dig yourself a hole, the harder it is to be able to get out eventually. So they need to start changing some things around themselves. But on the Manchester United side, I think it's still very, very poor. They need a lot of things to be able to work on. If their ideal was, and I think this is a quote that's been going out for quite a bit, is that Ten Hag in the preseason, we had assumed that Ten Hag wanted to be able to come in and play more like Ajax football, total football, half possession. But the key things that he's always said is like he wants to make them the best transitional team in the world, and that he does have the players to be able to do it. But I don't know if he's the right manager to do that because he's never done that before, right? Interesting to see. We'll still have to wait to see. As of right now, not looking great. They had other transitional moments that they could have done better even in this game, weren't able to capitalize. So I think that they're still a work in progress, but it's great to see that they can separate themselves a little bit from the Chelsea, right? Because the further away from Chelsea in the Premier League table, the less questions you're going to get asked about yourself. So I think that that's good for them, get the monkey off the back, but they need to string a couple of these together before the fans start questioning so much, right? So we'll wait and see what happens.
Okay, for sure. And Gio, last but not least, of course, give us your game from this weekend that you're keeping an eye out for.
If you like goals, I know one person who loves goals, and that is not who you think it is. It's Eddie Howe, because his job is safe for the time being. I think we talked about this in terms of having another team that is looking for a convincing performance to kind of ease the nerves of the fans who didn't expect the type of performances they had. Obviously, coming off a decent draw in the Champions League, I think it was fortunate they escaped with the draw there, but getting a draw there, getting points onto the board in the group stages, still important. But to come in after another short week, to put in a performance like this, overall team performance, defenders getting on, like I said, Sven Botman, Dan Burn, just everybody getting on the goal. Even Matty Longstaff to get a goal is shocking to me. It's absolutely shocking to me. The only person who didn't score a goal that I would like to have seen score a goal was Kieran Trippier, because I just feel like he is a very assist-heavy guy, but to see him score is kind of an odd sight. So I would love to see him score. But yeah, just overall great performance. Dominated. Didn't let up. I actually enjoyed that they didn't let up. It's a professional sport. I think you should have seen a little bit more from Sheffield. I think in terms of fight, even the livelihood of the squad, I think, was down after maybe the third goal. As a professional sports team or athlete, you kind of want to play the minutes through and kind of let them know that you're still there and you're not going to get pushed around just because the scoreline doesn't show it. But yeah, I think Newcastle fans are going to be quite calm and quite content this week. But yeah, it's the Premier League though. Another week can really just change your mood instantly. So don't be too high on your highs, because the lowest of lows will feel extra low for you. So good luck. It was a great week for them, and it was fun to watch all those goals.
Completely agree. Just wanted to mention that even though your prediction for Eddie Howe getting sacked is not looking that great, for me, my prediction of Paul Heckingbottom being one of the first managers to get sacked could be on the way there. So that's my only thing for this Newcastle Sheffield game. Mac, any last thoughts?
Quickly, want to be able to say Newcastle were the first side in Premier League history to have 8 different players score in the same match, excluding own goals. So great to see in terms of the diversity of their attack. I think this is much needed, absolutely. However, it will go one of two ways. We saw Liverpool do this twice last year, absolutely throttle teams. Did that fix their season? No, it just put on a band-aid on a bigger issue. So will this be a trend where, okay, maybe they still don't be able to play well? Because their next game in the Premier League, yeah, it's against Burnley, that's great. But they have a cup game this week against Manchester City. So immediately they're back in kind of a tough position, and they need to come up with the goods because the expectation for them is to beat Sheffield United, right? It doesn't matter by how much, they're going to win. It should be comfortable. The thought process going forward is they got to be competitive in the bigger games and see if they can be able to pull out win. So I still think it was needed. Great to see. But as we know, this is not necessarily a solve for teams to be able to fix their issues. So it's about the consistency. Will we see that? We'll have to wait and see. But as of right now, great to see. Love to see a team like that. And I think we can lock it in right now. Confirmed. Sheffield United are going down. I want to say just United are going down, but I felt like that might draw a couple lines, and Gio might get a little bit upset. But man can dream. Man can dream.
Hey, there's 6 matches. You never know.
Long season. But guys, this concludes our podcast for today. If you guys like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at @house_of_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email as well, housefooty@hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us will be later this week when we preview match week 7 of the Premier League. But until then, Mac, thank you.
Jorginho, go back to Chelsea.
Gio, thank you.
No, he's not. He's staying.
That's gonna.
See you guys.